spontaneity, physicality, group dynamics, especially as related to a particular subculture, and all that entails. The physical relationships between the actors, the characters, the movement. And when it's incredibly spontaneous but true, this is very cinematic. This gets tied in then to character, multiple characters often, how it moves the story along. And we tell the story, a lot of times not so much with words in film, although there's some films that do. In a lot of cases, it's very little dialogue, but the story is told through physical actions. Spontaneous physical actions, hopefully. So we're going to talk about The Deer Hunter by Michael Cimino, the director. The actors involved are Robert De Niro, Meryl Streep, John Savage, Christopher Walken, and the great John Cazale, as well as a few others. And it's a long film, but it's fascinating to watch. It's set in a very industrial town in Pennsylvania, which is almost entirely Russian immigrants and the next generation. And they have a particular way of moving, their music, their dance, the way they celebrate, for instance, a wedding, which is a large part of the first part of the film, their customs, and so forth. They're quite American, actually. In fact, that's a big deal in the film. But they are originally from another culture. And these things are blended together. And Michael Cimino did quite a smart thing, was for the big scenes, for the wedding reception, which has probably over 100 people, he used the people who live in the town as the extras. They're more than extras. They really have a life about them. There's something about this scene which also reminds me of the Godfather, the wedding in the beginning of the Godfather, which we're talking about in another video that's devoted to the Godfather. Though they're at a much lower economic level, there's kind of similar dynamics, similar idea in the directing of it. It's quite, there's no other word for it, it's quite real, as though you're really in the middle of this wedding with people getting drunk and dancing and singing and the rituals of a Russian wedding, and the principal players intermingling with a lot of other people throughout and getting progressively drunker and drunker and having a great time, or in some cases not having such a great time, and dancing together and so forth. And the themes of the film and of the characters themselves start to be revealed. And yet this is done in such a spontaneous way that you feel, again, like you're right in the middle of it, like you're one of the participants in the wedding. You feel the rhythms of the music in your body. You feel all of these things. You feel the sweat on the forehead. You even start to feel intoxicated yourself by the liquor. And we have to ask ourselves as actors and directors and filmmakers, how did Cimino do this? Or how did Coppola do it in The Godfather? How did they do it to such an extent that it's really rather miraculous? And how does it set the characters up for what comes later in the film? How do we achieve this kind of spontaneity? Well, one thing is that because in this case, because all these people are from this town and know the music and the dance and the rituals and everything, they already know how to do that. They're not actors, but then the thing of the director is to make them all relaxed enough and not criticize them or direct them so much. They have to have some of that, of course, but you make it as comfortable for them as you can, so that they behave as naturally as possible, that they're actually having a good time. If they're having a good time, they'll be great because they know what having a good time means in their own context. This is an interesting thing because a lot of directors, particularly young directors coming out of film school, they have a big thing about using non-actors. They love to use non-actors. And the principal films they study for that are The Bicycle Thieves by Vittorio De Sica and City of God, the Brazilian film. And the thing is that if you use non-actors in principal roles, you better be a great damn director or you're going to get terrible films, which is usually what happens. Most non-actor films actually are so specific to the milieu they're set in. So you see a lot from ghettos, for instance, or in the case of Brazil, the favelas. Because, yes, those people grew up with the violence, they grew up with the gangs, they grew up with all of that sort of thing, and so they know it all through their bodies. The dirty secret of all this is that, for instance, in City of God, they were trained. The ones who had the principal roles of the gang people from the favelas, they were favela kids, but they were trained for a whole year by a coach named Fátima Toledo, so that they actually were actors by that time. The actor in The Bicycle Thieves was excellent. He had hardly any dialogue, and basically De Sica directed him very well. But when he became a big star. When he tried to do other films, because he became a big star, they cast him in the lead in other films. He wasn't really an actor, and he messed them up. He couldn't do roles other than the kind of working man that he was, factory worker, and that he had a director like De Sica. When he tried to do other roles, he couldn't do it, where he had real involved dialogue and a character building and so forth. He wasn't a trained actor. He couldn't do it. He ended up committing suicide, actually. He was humiliated. So you got to be careful with this. Yes, non-actors can work very well if you cast them for what they are, in most of the time in minor roles or as extras. Then it can be absolutely great. But if you cast them in roles that are leads, important parts, which have a lot of depth to them, you're going to be very sorry. And yet you notice that actors like De Niro and Walken and Streep, etc., they're just as real, if not more real, than all the extras from that town. So instead of casting non-actors in important roles, cast very good actors in important roles, because they can do both.